Welcome to Kingdom Community South Africa. This is the youth program presented by the Kingdom Youth. In a world influenced by status, fame, charm, and deception, we, the youth of the Kingdom of God, are living amidst a world culture. There may come a time where we conform to standards of the world, backslide, and maybe even compromise our salvation in this desolate and vain environment. Being exposed to this negative environment is not a problem. We are to expect adversity, trials, and tribulations. However, as children of God, if we are not influencing the kingdom of God in this environment, that is the problem. Join us as we learn and discover our mandate and authority as children of God to influence the kingdom of God in our world today.
Hello, this is Ambassador Oli Masala, your host for our Kingdom Global Leadership Summit coming in July of 2022. We'd like to warmly invite you to our conference like no other happening in July. You need to book your seats because the seats are limited. We're going to be having guests from all over the world. So, see you in July.
Kingdom Community South Africa, KCSA, led by Ambassadors Charlie and Oli Masala, invite you as our esteemed guest to the inaugural Kingdom Leadership Summit 2022 to be held in our nation's capital, Pretoria, on 7th to 10th July 2022 at the Capitol Hotel, Menlyn, Maine. The summit boasts exceptional leaders from diverse spheres of influence and expertise who will be delivering groundbreaking presentations and discussions, providing practical tools to develop and inspire the leaders of today. Register now on www.kingdomcommunitysa.org. As seats are limited, WhatsApp +27 74 688 2111.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to yet another session of our youth briefings this Friday. Well, we've just wrapped up our youth summit, and last week we had our Ambassador CQ and Ambassador Nati, who just gave us some highlights of what was shared when it comes to youth summit. Well, tonight I would like to introduce our very special guest, Ambassador Mongi. Ambassador Mongi is here with us going to discuss the topic temptation. Ambassador Mongi, welcome.
Hi, how are you doing, Ambassador Mapehle? It's so good to see you. And also hello to everybody online. Just really, I'm really privileged to be here to discuss this really, really amazing topic called temptation. And I think it's such a relevant topic for us.
Definitely.
It's a relevant topic for us as youth in our country.
Yes.
I think there's so many aspects that are out there, from our friends to what we see on social media every day to, you know, the people that we associate ourselves with who are pulling on us. And so we have so many distractions that can really pull us and tempt us away from our purpose.
Definitely.
And what we're meant to be focusing on. But I think it's more important to also understand what temptation actually is.
Definitely.
You know, how to deal with it,
Yes.
how to see it when it kind of rears its ugly head.
Yes,
and
yes.
And to know that we can really overcome this. You know, I mean, God's made us more than conquerors. So I'm excited. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you.
Well, I'm excited too. I don't know about the viewers there at home. So let's unpack this topic, temptation. Ambassador Mongi, you mentioned there's different aspects of temptation. I mean, when you say temptation, I think most of the thing that comes to mind is sin.
Yeah.
What we
What's
do
bad?
wrong. What's
You
bad?
know what's bad, you know?
And I mean, you're sitting here mentioning things like TV, like media. What's wrong with media? What's wrong with watching TV? Tell us what temptation is.
Yeah. So I think there are two aspects of temptation. You know, the history of the word, call it tempting, is literally it's an old word. It's an old word used by it's a word that comes from masonry and guys who are blacksmiths. When they would make metal objects, or call it the Romans during the Roman Empire, what they do, they'd make double-edged swords, and basically the technique of folding the metal into something sharp was called tempting. So
Okay.
so when you'd heat something up, you'd smash it to mold it into what you want, is a process called tempting. So there's that aspect of tempting, which speaks to testing, which
Okay.
speaks to refinement, which speaks to, in life, and God promises you'll have many troubles, right?
Yes.
And I think that speaks to life, you going through a tempting process in life. Where all the impurities in your life are now being, call it, cleaned out. You go through trials and tribulations that allow you to be far more refined.
Yes.
That process, like metal, in making really a sharp sword, is called tempting. So that is one aspect of tempting.
Okay,
right?
wow.
It's a verb. It's a verb.
Yes.
It's tempting.
That's amazing to
Yeah,
know that
yeah.
that we actually have two different aspects when it comes to the word
Yeah,
tempting. That
yeah.
you've got the tempting where most of the people, when they think about it, it's all sin, it's all doing the wrong
Yeah.
thing. And you've got this other aspect that you just introduced
Yeah.
us to, where it talks about sharpening you yourself,
Yeah.
sharpening who you are, and all the
Exactly.
things that you have dealt with that you just need to iron out.
Yes.
Very
Yeah.
interesting, Ambassador.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Then there's then the second aspect of it, which is now dealing with temptation.
Yes.
Which I think most of us are quite comfortable and familiar around. You grow up talking about sin and temptation and doing what's wrong. And I think that there's I think we almost need to start demystifying temptation. So many times it's in a very religious context.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I've sinned or I've done something bad or no, and I think that God is such a gracious God that he gives you a way of how to deal with things that pull you away or cause you to rebel against him.
yes.
I mean, the word sin in itself is not, I've looked at somebody or I've judged somebody or I'm jealous of somebody. Those are the results of. But sin is actually just anything that rebels against God.
Wow.
Anything that rebels against God, whether it's an attitude or it's an action.
Wow.
Those are just outflows.
Yes.
And that is in its term sin, which is actually just rebellion. But I think temptation is what now gets you to rebel against God. And I think that's what we want to talk about, and that's what I'm really excited about talking about today.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Ambassador Mongi, yes, talking about this concept of temptation, we're talking about how this is actually affecting us on a daily basis, and how we are rebelling against God, So how do we deal with this rebellion of being tempted every day that just draws us back, and just makes us feel that we are bad people because all we think about is that we are sinning.
Yeah.
How do we deal with that?
Yeah. So I think there's, you raised kind of two topics there. So I think one, you talk about how sin makes you feel. All right. So once you've sinned, you always kind of feel guilty or you feel shameful.
Yes.
Because God's allowed our consciences to be soft, and so when you have rebelled against God, you do feel a sense of, oh man, I've messed up.
Definitely.
Which is what God has allowed us to feel, so that we can actually then know that something's wrong, but also be able to change. Because there's no condemnation. God does not condemn you. God does not judge you. There is judgment.
Yes.
But if you are now in a position where you're like, God, I have sinned, I've rebelled, I've fallen out of alignment with what you want, there's always grace that allows you to now fall back into alignment. So I think, where we're dealing with guilt and we're dealing with shame, that I'll definitely want to touch on, But I think on a daily basis, one of the things that I've really picked up, and dealing with things also in my own personal life and
Yes.
sharing about that, is that, sin is or rebelling against God is progressive. It's not just one day like you decide that you're gonna
That's right.
disobey or fall out of alignment with God.
That's
you know?
right.
There's a process, and I think that there's a
Yes.
6-step process.
Okay.
You know,
Tell us about it.
that is shown. So in the book of Genesis, you have Eve, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so Eve was an interesting woman. I mean, obviously you have Adam, who's completely besotted by how beautiful this woman is.
Definitely.
You know, but there's a key scripture that I actually want to discuss here. It says here in Genesis 6 verse 3 to 6, chapter 3 verse 6. It says here, when the woman saw that the fruit of the tree was good for food and pleasing to the eye, and also desirable for gaining wisdom, she took some and ate it. Then it falls on to say that she also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate it.
Yes.
So there is the first time in the history of humanity where rebellion is actually introduced, because everything was perfect before.
Definitely.
Everything was good.
Yes.
Right? So I think, you know, when you look at this, there are almost six steps.
Okay.
You know? So the first step is that, you know, what did Eve do? She saw something.
Yes.
You know, so what happens is that, you know, God has given us our sight, you know, and I realize that, you know, our senses are what are the first entrance or the gates into the initial temptation or the initial rebellion against God.
Okay.
So, you know, when people say, you know, listen, stay away from watching certain movies. You know, stay away from listening to certain lyrics.
You always get that.
It's not trying to be like, you must be all for cramp and stiff. It's about protecting yourself, because your eyes are a gateway.
Yes.
You know, if you're not tempted with, you can only be tempted with something that you see.
Yes.
You know, so I think, you know, our sight is a very, very important thing. So guarding what we listen to,
Yes.
guarding what we expose ourselves to, guarding where we go is very important, because that also then protects us.
Yes.
You know, because you will never ever be tempted by something that you don't see.
True.
You never will. You know,
Yes.
something that you don't listen to, never will be tempted. You know. You know, then the second thing that you also notice about Eve is that she noticed that it was pleasing to the eye.
The red apple, juicy apple.
It was pleasing, guys.
I can just imagine all
it was gorgeous.
the imagination. Yes.
You know, and honestly, I don't believe, you know, every time you know, it's so funny. We've all been conditioned to think that this fruit was an apple.
Yes.
You know, I don't know why people. It could have been an orange. It could have been a pineapple. You know, it was a fruit. Just says it was a fruit, right?
Yes.
But it was appealing. So it looked good. You know, I think that what happens. I think the second stage of temptation is that we notice how pleasing something is.
Yes.
So if there's a guy at school, you know, or a guy in class, or a guy that you take the bus with, you know, or a girl that you see, you know, you notice that she's pleasing, you know.
Yes.
And the thing is that, you know, God has given us senses and He's made everything beautiful. So I think it's so important to know that, you know, to notice that somebody else is beautiful is good.
Yes, definitely.
Everything's beautiful, you know.
That's true.
To notice that somebody's talented or is smart or looks attractive, that's good. That's fine.
It is.
Do you know what I'm saying? But what happens is that, you know, when we start imagining, and that's the pleasing part. When we start imagining what's happening or imagining this person, you know, that's when we also need to be quite wary about, okay, you know, what happens is that I realize that, you know, some of the most attractive people, unfortunately, inside are just not good.
Yeah.
And nobody walks around with a sign on their forehead saying,
forehead.
I am not cool inside. You know, I have issues inside. You know what I'm saying? Nobody
Yes.
walks around. So we all see the outside. And marketing is like that. You know, the industry of all of the products is what this thing all looks like.
Yes, yes.
You know, it all looks good, but you don't know what's behind that. You know, so I think that's step number 2 in terms of what happens. You know, you know, the third step in terms of this, it says here that, you know, she saw that it was pleasing. Then it says that, and that it was desirable.
Yes.
Okay, so now, you know, the first 2 steps, you haven't sinned. You haven't rebelled against God. You're actually acknowledging that, you know, Mapeshle, you're an attractive lady. Great. You know?
Yes.
And it's there. Awesome, God's made you. You're amazing, and that's that.
Okay.
But what happens is that, and that's where I think guarding how we think is so important, is that when we move on to desire, it means that now we're starting to think about how we want to have it.
Okay.
Do you know what I'm saying? We start imagining us having it. So if it's a person of the opposite sex, all right, you know, whether you see them on Instagram, so you following some of your friends on Instagram, then you start looking and you start seeing this person, you're like, oh my goodness, man, okay, this person's quite attractive.
Yes.
But then you start thinking about, man, what would it be like if I was with her? Or,
Yes.
or you know what, this person seems to be more attractive than my person
Yes.
that I have in my life.
Yes.
Or you think about this party, you know, you're like, oh man, this party's gonna be so cool. Or this club, you know, and you think to yourself, man, like if I go there, it means that I'm now going to be engaged with those
With-
kind of people,
definitely.
and I'm going to feel better about myself.
Sure.
So Jesus also, it's the first time Jesus builds on this topic of desiring, because he then says in Matthew 5 verse 28, it says here, but I tell you, if anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in the heart. So he said, if you look at a woman, you look at a woman, but it's the lustfulness, the desire, that now Jesus is actually, now that's when you go into sin.
Sure.
Because then what happens in life, it's so weird. Like, you meet somebody who's attractive, whether they're on the bus, whatever, but then you start plotting. You start thinking, okay, if I dress a certain way to get them, you start wearing shorter skirts.
Yes.
The guys start saying, she always comes here. I know I shouldn't be there. Or, if I follow her and like more pictures, then she'll start noticing me.
Yes, yes.
You've gone into a place of desire, and I think it's a dangerous place to start playing, because then you start trying to be imaginative. You start developing strategies to try and get what you want, and that's the challenge.
Okay. Wow,
know?
this is very interesting, Pastor. And I know you can go on and on. But while we are here, is that you mentioned the first step where you see, you look and you see this thing is beautiful,
Yeah.
And then you mentioned you're talking about the second stage now, about now the desiring. And this is where you are plotting on how I can possibly...
How you want it now.
Yes, how I
know?
want it.
Yeah.
How I want it, and how to get it closer to
me. So
exactly,
how can I start getting, yeah.
And you're saying that that's where sin starts.
That's where sin
when it
starts.
comes to temptation,
Yeah.
And how do we just get to
Move
the
on.
first stage?
Yeah.
I don't want to move on.
No, I got you, yeah.
So how do we just stop at the first stage?
I think that, God has made everything beautiful. God has given us senses.
Yes.
God has given us abilities to think, to recognize, and those are all good things, but those are good things that ought to be used in the direction of our purpose, in the direction of growing our lives and the lives of other people around us. What happens is that when we see something that is attractive and acknowledge it, that is good. There's
Yes.
nothing wrong with that.
Yes.
It's when you start fantasizing and imagining how this thing is now going to be good for you.
Okay.
And you know that it's not meant for you. Like, let's say you're dating somebody and you find another person of the opposite sex.
Yes.
You know you're already in a committed relationship. Seeing somebody else in the mall talking, oh, that person's beautiful, great, Or you're single and you're thinking to yourself, oh man, I wish I had a woman like that. That's
Yes.
actually,
Yes.
that's the kind of woman I want to date.
Yes.
That's perfect.
Yes.
Cool. I mean, I see that person's aspect. Oh, that's great. When it's a question of, oh, now I see that person, oh, I want that person. And you start going into a place where you start lusting after this person.
Yes.
You start imagining things that are really, that are not healthy, they're not wholesome. So you start thinking quite sexually
Yes.
about this person, or it may not even be about sex per se. It could be, you are now involved in a conversation
Yes.
with friends. You're just talking, but then somebody raises something bad about somebody, all right? And then you start thinking, oh my goodness, but this person is also like this. And then you start being involved in that. It's cool to understand, okay, great, I hear you. But when you start being involved and start imagining and start supporting that kind of rhetoric,
Yes.
that's when it starts becoming bad. And private sin is actually some of the most dangerous.
It is.
Because nobody sees you. You know, when somebody speaks, people can always say, dude, like, stop. You know? But when you're by yourself and you're on your phone or you're online, you know,
Yes, yes.
or you are at a movie or you have a magazine in front of you, that's when you start seeing images or music that is very suggestive, and you start picturing these things. That's when you know you're going into step number 3, where you're starting to now desire this thing.
Okay.
And that's the dangerous part, because Jesus was saying when you look at somebody lustfully, that's why Jesus says to you in the gospel, well, in Matthew, he speaks about if your eye causes you to sin, pluck it out.
Yes, yes.
You know,
yes.
and it's about stopping the things that tempt you before, because the senses are the gateway. So if you're not exposed to that, or you make sure you live disciplined to not expose it, you reduce the amount of things that you're tempted with.
Yes, yes, yes.
But we also know that you're not Amish. You don't live in isolation.
No, you don't.
So developing maturity to say, if I see something that's attractive, you know, to answer your question, I realize that what helps me is when I see something that's desirable, it stops there. Oh, it's beautiful. Great. Awesome. Let's move on.
Yes.
You know, you see it, it's good, move on.
Very,
Yeah.
very.
It's called, I call it bouncing.
Oh, okay.
I call
All
it
right.
bouncing. You know, I see something, or I will see, let's say it's an attractive woman, or I have a great conversation with somebody that stimulates me. I'm like, oh my goodness, that's really, really good. It was great conversation. Then we bounce, we move on to the next one. Next conversation. You know, it's important that, because everything starts in our mind.
Yes.
So it's what you think about something. If you find that you're thinking a lot about something, you need to get onto a different topic to think about.
Well, Ambassador, I hear what you're saying, and some people might say this is easier said than done, you know. And you mentioned discipline,
Yeah.
you know, and you mentioned that your eyes are the gateway, or your
Correct.
senses are the
gateway.
gateway, you know. So what happens after the step of desire? I mean,
Yeah.
full us in. We need to know these processes so we can be alert,
Exactly, and be knowledgeable.
be knowledgeable. Yes.
Yeah. You know, guys, and I'll say it again, you know, is that like sin or rebelling against God doesn't happen by surprise. It doesn't. God, like sin, it's not designed that way. You know, there's always a stage, and you always get red flags that can help you. So
Yes.
so just to summarize the current steps. So one, you'll see something like Eve saw she saw the fruit.
Yes.
And then you see, then that fruit is pleasurable. You see that it's pleasurable, right? So then you start imagining it. And then you go to step number 3, which is then you start desiring it. You know?
Yes.
You start plotting, how am I going to get to this thing here? How is this thing going to make me feel, right? And then once you're in that stage, the next step that naturally comes, that now you actually go towards it. You
Yes.
touch it. You know, so the thing about touching, step number 4 is that after desire is that you touch it, right? When you touch it, this is the dangerous part, because what happens when you touch it is that you start creating a bond. You start creating a bond. So touching is dangerous because the bond then starts taking place. So
Yes.
and many of the time it's not a physical touch, it's an emotional one. You know, you're there and you see on Instagram somebody who's really, really attractive.
Yes.
You're following this person for a while.
Okay.
Effectively, right? You're looking at them, you're commenting, hi, how you doing? You're talking. Ladies, you know, the guys will come in, they'll talk, they'll comment on your post, whatever. And then suddenly there's the slide into the DM.
Yes.
Hi, how are you doing? And then you start having a conversation there, whether it's on what, from there it moves to WhatsApp. But then what happens is that there's a rapport,
Yes.
as an example, right?
Yes.
And in that rapport, that's where you start seeing the bond.
Yes,
The
definitely.
bond is the touching now. Now I'm talking to you. Now I'm having an engagement with you. Now you're entertaining me.
Yes.
Now there's an emotional, call it connection that we have. And that's the thing. It's the emotional connection.
Okay.
Do you know what I'm saying? It's
Yes,
the emotional
yes.
connection that you create.
Yes.
And what happens that because it's exhilarating.
It is.
That's the thing. You know, it's exciting. It makes you feel good. And the thing about that is that it's a chemical. Basically what happens when you see something that's attractive, all right? Hormones trigger in your body.
They do.
All right? It releases a hormone called oxytocin. It's the same hormone that you get off the gym. And dopamine. So then what happens that you feel good. So somebody affirms you,
Yes.
what happens? You feel good.
You do.
All right. So then what happens that you want more of that, and that's now the fourth place that a bond starts being created, where you actually start feeling good. You start feeling wanted. You start feeling acknowledged. You know, as a guy, you start feeling, oh, this woman wants me, or as a woman, oh, this starts feeling good, and that bond becomes quite dangerous. You know, when you look at Joseph.
Yes.
Joseph, people think Joseph was a strong man, Shabalala. Guys, Joseph should not. You know, we learn about him. I think God was really merciful to Joseph, and Joseph was just humble. But if you just think about just that story, I mean, how did Potiphar's wife grab his coat? It's because he was there.
Yes.
He was very, very close to this woman. This woman must have been touching him, and he must have been touching her.
Yes.
But then when you have the fear of God, God is like, listen, my son, get out of there.
Ran.
He ran. All right? You know? And so I think the big thing is that the point of being touched and having that emotional bond becomes something that you must be very, very careful about, right?
Yes.
Because then after step number 4, which is the touching, is that's when you actually go and you taste. All right. And the tasting there is that now you are actually in the rebellion.
Okay.
Now you've acted. So at all these stages, you could say no. You know, at desire, you could say no. Okay, cool, I'm not here. At even like touching, you know, or the
Yes.
emotional bond. You know,
Yes.
sometimes, you know, guys or girls will, especially within, call it church environments, you know, like we think that, man, you know, if I am reading scriptures to this person, it always starts off so innocently. You know, I'm talking to you about God. I'm trying to
Yes.
help you. You know,
Yes.
there's a limit to that. You know, you can pray for somebody, you can minister to them, but then you need to leave it very quickly.
Wow.
Otherwise, that becomes a dependency, and that's not your role.
No.
You know, somebody more senior can help counsel the guy or the girl. It's not your
Yes.
role. You know,
Yes.
because then you quickly go into now getting into a bonded relationship, and that allows you to taste now. The tasting's when now you're already there, and it just creates an appetite. So Joseph could have now actually slept with Potiphar's wife. And then they could have been like, okay, we can do it again this time, you know? Because, you know, you in that story, the reason why Joseph was with Potiphar's wife is because the king wasn't there. So they had already planned how to, there was a level of communication and an
Imagine,
opportunity,
yes.
you know? So God never, like, God will never allow you to rebel against him without him telling you or giving you some warning signs. This is a warning sign. This is a warning sign. You know? So it's very important that we listen and are aware of those warning signs to help us, right?
Those are very, very good points that you're mentioning there, Ambassador. Something that I would like to ask is that, and earlier you mentioned this, where you know that this is not right.
Yeah.
This is not the right thing to do.
Yeah.
But somehow, somewhere, you are just not listening to that.
Yeah.
To that voice or to that knowledge of knowing that this is not right.
Yeah.
How does that happen? How does one person knowing that I should not be eating that fruit, I should not be talking to that person, or whatever
Yeah.
you think is temptation to you.
Yeah.
You know that you're not supposed to do that, but somehow you just find yourself doing it at the end of
Yeah.
the day.
You know what I realize. And I don't want to introduce a new topic, but I think the power of rationalizing
Okay.
is something that we do we do very well
Yes.
as human beings. We can rationalize anything.
Yes.
And I think when we start rationalizing what we know is wrong, and what I mean by rationalizing, we start thinking, oh, it's not that bad. Oh, you know what, just a little bit of just this.
Yes.
You know, and because when you do it, you actually feel a bit more excited. That's when you know to say, hey, listen, I need to take a step back. And it actually, can I be honest with you? No amount of tongues, no amount of prayer will stop you from moving. And what I mean by that is that you ultimately have to make a decision.
Okay.
So you can pray,
Yes,
yes.
yes.
You can do whatever you want, but ultimately you have to make a decision. So it's self-discipline.
Yes.
That's what it is. You know, God has given you a sound mind. You know, so if you're feeling that something is going to bring you into the wrong direction, you know, you have people around you who can help you.
Yes. Yes.
You know, speak to somebody, speak to a friend. You know, hey, listen, this person's has been following me on the gram. This person's been WhatsApping me. You know, I've been trying to deal with it, but it's not helping me. Help me out.
Help me out.
There's no shame.
Don't keep it to
Don't
yourself.
keep it to yourself, guys. Don't keep. Satan wants to, you know, one of his biggest tactics is to try to isolate you.
Yes.
Don't isolate yourself. You're not an island. I'm telling you now. If you fly alone, you die alone.
You die alone. Yes. Yes.
You know, so it's so important to have people who speak into your life to help you.
And
you know?
also just
Yeah.
to know that you're not the only one going
You're
through what you're
not.
going through.
No temptation has seizes that is not common to man. Everyone has gone through what you're going through.
Exactly.
You know, and I think it goes to a different topic where we you know, so many times we find ourselves having committed sin.
Yes.
We've committed sin. We've rebelled against God, right? We're feeling guilty. We're feeling hurt. We're feeling a lot of shame.
Yes.
I want to encourage you right now, do not isolate yourself. If you have a group of friends that can guide you in doing what's right, go to those friends. Right?
Yes.
I'm telling you, go to them. You'll feel far more encouraged. Don't isolate yourself. Go to church. Go speak to the people. Because what happens that the guilt eats us up so much that
It
we start
does.
making permanent decisions
It does.
in a very temporary situation.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
You know, like we even want to try, some of us, we want to kill ourselves.
Sure.
You know, we want to kill ourselves. We think that what we've done is so bad.
That's all right.
But God is saying that He has grace. And what grace allows you to do is it allows you to say, you know what, God, I didn't do that right. And when the Bible says confess, it doesn't mean, hey, I must call this guy and tell it I did this. No. It means agree very quickly with God.
yes.
The Greek of confess means agree with, because it's agree. Agree with God.
Okay.
If something's wrong, okay, I agree with you, God. I agree with you, Father. Cool. Now I'm going to do this and this and this. I'm going to speak to a friend of mine. I'll speak to you, my Petle. This is what I've agreed to with God. I'm going to just, you know, let's have a discussion. Like, give me a call, find out how the more open you are,
Yes. Yes.
there's less shame,
Yes.
and there's far more help.
Wow. Powerful.
You know?
Very, very powerful. Well, what a great evening it is. And I mean, there's a lot of different other aspects that just
Yeah.
comes in this aspect of
Yeah.
temptation. I mean, yes, we've learned all the stages. Ambassador Mungi has taken us through all the stages. He has mentioned that, you know, if you find yourself in that place, do not isolate yourself.
Yeah.
Because that's where the real danger comes in.
Yeah.
Find someone that you can speak to.
Yeah.
Surround yourself with people that are open to you, you know, that are receivable, that you are able to speak to.
Correct.
I mean, Ambassador, if we continue, we'll never end this.
No,
night.
we won't. There's so much to talk about.
There's so much to talk about. So,
very exciting.
any final thoughts when it comes to this topic, temptation,
Yeah.
before we close off tonight?
You know, I think the biggest thing for me is God has given us dominion and authority over sin. And I think that for me is the biggest thing, is to know that whatever we face in our lives, that God's given you authority over it. You're not at the mercy of sin. You're not at the mercy of situations.
Yes.
You know, God has given you dominion, and God wants you to honor Him above yourself and your body.
Wow.
So over and above your play, don't let anything come between you and your obedience with God. Whether it's a man, whether somebody saying, I won't pay your rent, I won't do this, I won't do that. Do not rebel against God, because God will always give you a way that you can stand up under it.
That's right.
That's the promise.
That's right.
There will always be a way that you can stand up under it.
That's
so
right.
you have authority in your life, whether it's drugs, whether it's sex, whether it's corruption, whether you involve yourself in deals that are not good, or whether it's people that you find that are pulling you the wrong way. God is saying you can stand up under it today. Don't be at the whim of it. You're strong.
Yes.
You're strong.
Powerful, very
Yeah.
powerful. Well, there you have it for tonight, viewers. Ambassador, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Always a pleasure just sitting with you and able to have
you.
these sort of conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so.
To our viewers, thank you very much for joining us tonight. It has been wonderful.
Yeah.
You can always connect with us on our various platforms. We're available on Facebook. We're also on YouTube. We also have our Sunday briefings happening every Sunday at a new hotel in Centurion.
Which are awesome.
Yes, next to Centurion Mall. You can join us in person. Those briefings start at 10 a.m. Otherwise, you can join us online on Facebook and on YouTube. Next week, we'll be having our Kingdom Leadership Summit taking place from Thursday the 7th until Sunday the 10th, which means Kingdom Youth sessions won't be available this coming Friday, but you can always join us for the leadership conference that will be taking place at Capitol Hotel in Menlyn, Maine. From the Kingdom Youth, I'm Mapetle Siema, and we'd just like to thank you for joining us. See you on Sunday, and see you at the top.
Hello, this is Ambassador Oli Masala, your host for our Kingdom Global Leadership Summit coming in July of 2022. We'd like to warmly invite you to our conference like no other happening in July. You need to book your seats because the seats are limited. We're going to be having guests from all over the world. So see you in July.
Kingdom Community South Africa, KCSA, led by Ambassadors Charlie and Oli Masala, invite you as our esteemed guest to the inaugural Kingdom Leadership Summit 2022 to be held in our nation's capital, Pretoria, on 7th to 10th July 2022 at the Capitol Hotel, Menlyn, Maine. The summit boasts exceptional leaders from diverse spheres of influence and expertise who will be delivering groundbreaking presentations and discussions, providing practical tools to develop and inspire the leaders of today. Register now on www.kingdomcommunitysa.org. As seats are limited, WhatsApp +27 74 688 2111.